So picture this. It's September 1683, and the fate of Central Europe is literally hanging by a thread. You've got this massive Ottoman army right at the dates of Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire. For 2 agonizing months, the city has been under siege, and it's just about to fall. What happens next? Well, that's a story that people would argue about for centuries. Okay, let's get right into it.
Talk about defiant, right? That was the commander of Vienna's garrison, Count von Starhamburg. I mean, he was facing an army more than 10 times the size of his own forces. Surrender? No way. Not an option. These words right here, they really set the stage for one of the most desperate, do-or-die last stands in European history.
So just how bad was it inside the city? Let's zoom in on the situation, because as those final days approached, the picture was, to put it mildly, incredibly grim. For almost 2 whole months, Vienna was totally cut off. The Ottoman army, led by this guy Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, was just methodically, patiently digging its way closer and closer to the city walls. They were using mines to blast these huge holes in the defenses. By early September, they'd captured a key outer fort, and the main walls were literally about to crumble. I mean, Vienna was holding on by a prayer. And then, on September 11th, they saw it. A signal fire from the hills, a promise that help was, finally, on the way. And if you want to talk about desperation, just look at the conditions inside those walls. The garrison was down to its last few fighters. Their ammunition was almost completely gone. The city itself was just a nightmare. We're talking rubble, corpses, and rampant disease. Starhamburg knew, he absolutely knew, that if that relief army didn't make it, the city was going to fall, and a massacre was pretty much guaranteed. So while Vienna is suffering, this incredibly complex game of political chess is being played all across Europe. You know, this relief army wasn't a sure thing at all. It had to be painstakingly pieced together from this patchwork of rival states, and every single one of them had their own agenda.
At the center of this whole thing, you have two fascinatingly different leaders. On one side, there's the Ottoman Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa. This guy was incredibly ambitious, super arrogant, and get this, he was actually disobeying the Sultan. The Sultan just wanted him to capture a few forts, but Mustafa, he was dreaming of conquering Vienna for his own personal glory. And then, opposing him, you have John III Sobieski, the King of Poland. A total legend on the battlefield, maybe a little past his prime, but his tactical mind was as sharp as ever. And crucially, he was bound by a treaty to come and help Vienna.
And that's the key thing to remember here. This relief force was a real international effort. It was all put together thanks to the Treaty of Warsaw, signed just a few months before. And Pope Innocent XI, he was a huge player here, pushing for everyone to unite and providing a ton of money to make it happen. So the final army wasn't just Polish and Austrian. It was a coalition, a whole mix of forces from Bavaria, Saxony, and other German states. All told, you had over 66,000 men from different lands with different loyalties, all marching together. Okay, so the alliance is formed, the army is on the move, and the stage is now set for one of the most dramatic moments of the entire battle. Because the relief army didn't show up on the flat plains where everyone expected them. Nope. They came from a totally unexpected direction, the dense, hilly Vienna wood.
Just try to imagine being in that Ottoman camp. You're looking up at the Kahlenberg Hill, and for weeks, there's been nothing. And then suddenly, this. An Ottoman writer at the time described it as a flood of black pitch pouring down the hills. What a description. It just perfectly captures the shock and awe of seeing that Christian army appear out of nowhere. The trap was about to spring.
And the plan itself? It was genius. Devised by the Austrian commander Duke Charles of Lorraine, it was both audacious and incredibly simple. First, use the woods as cover. Second, pop out on the high ground completely unexpectedly. Third, use gravity to your advantage and just charge downhill in one massive wave. The goal was to pin the Ottoman army in this deadly vice, with the Allies coming from one side, the city walls on the other, and the river at their back. Absolutely nowhere to run.
Now, the battle itself raged for the entire day on September 12th. The Allied infantry was slowly, painstakingly pushing the Ottomans back. But as evening started to fall, and you could see the Ottoman lines begin to waver, Sobieski knew. This was the moment. And that's when he unleashed the final decisive blow. 18,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many horsemen took part in that final charge. It was a mix of Polish and German cavalry, all coming together to form this massive, thundering wave of steel and horse. And yeah, you read that right.
This wasn't just some big charge. It is widely considered to be the single largest cavalry charge in all of recorded history, period. We're talking about a moment of epic, almost unbelievable scale, and it was all aimed right at the heart of the Ottoman army.
And who was leading this insane charge? None other than the most spectacular cavalry of the age, the Polish winged Hussars. These guys were an absolutely terrifying sight. Imagine it. They're covered in steel armor, draped in tiger pelts, and then, most famously, they're wearing these huge wooden frames on their backs with eagle feathers attached. These wings would make this deafening, eerie rattling sound as they charged. Armed with these massive 19-foot lances, they were just an unstoppable force that smashed right into the exhausted Ottoman soldiers and completely broke their will to fight.
After it was all over, King Sobieski sent a message to the Pope, and in this really clever twist on Julius Caesar's famous line, "I came, I saw, I conquered," he wrote, "We came, we saw, God conquered." It just perfectly captured the feeling that for so many people, this victory felt like nothing short of a miracle. So, the battle's over, Vienna is saved. End of story, right? Well, not so fast. The victory's real meaning is something historians still argue about today. Was this really the moment that saved Europe? Let's zoom out and take a look at the legacy. The immediate results were, well, decisive. The Ottoman army was completely routed, leaving behind a camp just filled with incredible treasure. And Kara Mustafa, the ambitious Grand Vizier, he paid the ultimate price for his failure. He was strangled on the Sultan's orders. For the Ottoman Empire, this was the high watermark. They would never again seriously threaten Central Europe. And this brings us right to the heart of the modern debate. Because you often hear this really simplified version of the story, right? The Polish winged Hussars rode in like heroes and saved all of Christendom. But is that the whole picture? Okay, this is where it gets really interesting when you compare the popular story with the more complicated historical reality. I mean, this whole idea of a simple Christianity versus Islam clash gets messy when you remember the Ottomans were allied with Catholic France, and Sobieski's own army included Muslim Tatars. The idea that Poland alone saved the day, that kind of overlooks the huge contributions from the German and Austrian soldiers. And a lot of historians now argue that the Ottoman Empire was already overextended, maybe even in decline, so a full conquest of Europe was probably never in the cards. So the main takeaway here is that it was way, way more complex than the simple legend we usually hear. And that leads us to our final thought. The Battle of Vienna isn't just some dusty old history. Its memory has been used in the modern era by groups like Al-Qaeda, who reportedly saw the September 11th attacks as a kind of revenge for this defeat. Even recently, the city of Vienna canceled plans for a monument to King Sobieski because they were worried it could stir up anti-Turkish feelings. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do we remember a victory that for some people represents salvation, but for others represents a historic grievance? It seems the echoes of that incredible cavalry charge can still be heard today.